Great. So I kind of jumped into presenting some material without talking about what's coming up through the days. So let me back it up a little bit, do that, and then we'll go back into some of this. So tonight we're kind of introducing some of maybe the themes and trying to integrate them a little bit into what's termed interpersonal neurobiology. How do we work in relationship with each other? What's the way we're wired to be in relationship? And then to look at that through a motivational interviewing lens. How do we help a man find his own source of motivation? We'll be looking at that tomorrow. What's his own drive to do something? And how do we allow space for that? Dr. Stefano and I were talking at break, and he was reminding me, and rightly so, motivational interviewing is one skill set. Sometimes a guy really just needs advising. And he'll tell you, I don't know how to do this. And you wouldn't want to just say, well, tell me how you feel like doing that. You know, here's a way to do that. Or here's some ways to maybe talk to a therapist about how to manage anxiety. There's some pieces there that are very important. So to know when there's a technical need or a particular informational need, motivational interviewing doesn't meet those needs. That seem fair? The reason I kind of favor teaching motivational interviewing is I think we tend to favor going to solutions with people too quickly, more than staying in the relationship and letting things unfold. So take this as maybe sort of a corrective to something I've seen as a default, but it's not a panacea for everything. It's one set of, and as you do the reading, you'll see that in the book too. They wouldn't say, do this in every situation. You know, do this when you're really looking to sort of find and help a man find his own motivation. If people find their own motivation, we know that change is more likely to happen. Growth and change are more likely to happen. And that lines up with what we're looking at in this slide. One of our jokes at the seminary with guys who are struggling with things like chastity is, so have you tried trying harder? Because that works for most people. They try lots harder. So go ahead. We're good? Okay. So so tomorrow we'll look at some of the motivational interviewing and what we call the ORs, open-ended question and affirmations, reflections and summaries, and we'll walk through those skills. On Friday, I want to look at what to do with resistance when you encounter resistance. And when you encounter resistance in yourself and in the man, each of these things we talk about, I want you to try on with yourself. Because these aren't just, you know, we're not sort of these fully formed human beings performing operations of formation. We are in a dyadic thing. Martin Buber said years ago, if you're not willing to be changed by the person you're encountering, don't try to change them. Does that seem fair? If you're not willing to be changed because you're having an I-thou encounter, not an I-it. Because then we're reduced to kind of objectifying things. So if you're not willing, and I get changed a great deal by my clients. They instruct me, they've taught me so much over the years. They've helped me see my blind sides, like my children have and my wife have. So we're in a relationship. So if a guy starts to question what you're doing, be quite interested instead of just pulling out your expertise. We'll destroy trust really quickly by pulling out just expertise. I had a client teach me this years ago, right? He said to me early on, he'd been depressed for years, had come from another country. I was starting to see him, and he said, do you know what you're going to do to help me get better? And I said, I really don't know yet. I want to know, but I don't know yet. We're working on something together. Here's some things we can try, but I don't know yet what's going to work for you. 2 years later, when he was better, he said, that's when I learned to trust you, that you were willing not to know, willing not to put on and to be uncertain with me so we could discover something together. Now, if I did know, I should have told him, right? If I said, yeah, do this and this and this, you'll be better. Here's the steps to take. And there are steps to take that he was working on, but they weren't really integrating at the level that he needed to recover. So Friday we'll be working on resistance. Saturday we'll be working on how do you start to develop a culture, a formative culture among yourselves as formators in your seminary? And what are ways to sort of encourage that to happen? What's the vulnerability you're willing to risk with each other in terms of doing this work together and being transparent with each other in where you're struggling? Okay. So that'll be what's coming up over the next days. Today I'm giving maybe some sort of pegs of concepts that I'll be referring back to in this. So one of the things that I find quite interesting in the last 20 years is something called interpersonal neurobiology. Are people familiar with that term? That the way I'm wired affects the way you're wired. And this is my daughter and my granddaughter, as they're talking, they are actually changing each other. They are both getting more dopamine in their system, more oxytocin, more other positive neurotransmitters. They're both becoming more wired for connection. And over time, both of their brains are actually going to show that difference. So even seminarians who had maybe we'll talk about wounded attachment, over time, if they can have delight with you or be seen deeply by you or sense that you get to feel with them, they can feel soothed, seen, and secure. They will start to be able to enter themselves more deeply, which will really fit the affirmation stuff, I think, Sue, that you'll be talking about. Okay. One thing I've asked you already tonight is when you tell me something, I say, where do you feel that? That's because if your body isn't feeling it, you're not really having an emotion yet. And if you feel it and embody it, it will start to communicate more deeply to you with yourself and to another person. So I really would encourage you to pay attention to what's my body doing as I think about seeing this guy. What's my body doing? Am I tensing up? Am I sort of spacing out and starting to worry? Am I dissociating from myself a little? What's my body like to be around in this place where we're operating with each other? And where he's going to pick up my sense of how I'm being with him in an embodied way. I'm going to skip through a couple of these. Well, maybe could somebody read these paragraphs so we'll get the mic out. Somebody take one of them and then we'll do another. Okay, up here, Father John will take the first one. Just things I think they're worth bearing in mind, that we're working with somebody who comes with the calling.
In God's plan, every man is born to seek self-fulfillment, for every human life is called to some task by God. At birth, the human being possesses certain aptitudes and abilities in germinal form, and these qualities are to be cultivated so that they may bear fruit. Pope Paul VI.
Okay, great.
Okay,
somebody take the next one.
okay.
Formators should be attentive in discerning whether there is a merely formal and external respect given to the formation demands placed upon those entrusted to their care. Such an attitude would not help their integral growth, but rather will make them accustomed more or less unconsciously to a purely servile and self-serving obedience.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's something to keep reflecting on. I think this will be something Sue will be touching on too, is if we're just seeking conformity, and it's really easy in a seminary program to seek that. We don't really have an integrated formation happening for a man. So can I see the particular stone in front of me, the man that's presenting himself, and notice what his particular calling is, whether it's as a priest or something else, but can I look for that? What are the contours of who this person really is? Anything you'd want to add on any of that, Sue? Or? No, we're good. Okay. We'll jump ahead. So I want to go to something. How many of you know what internal family systems is? Okay, so a few of you. I want to describe it. We won't go into depth about it, but it's going to be another way for us to pay attention to something. So this is from Canta la Mesa. If Jesus were to ask me, as he did the poor demoniac in the gospel, what is your name? I too would have to reply, I am Legion, for there are many of us. What's he meaning? There are many of us. What's he talking about? There's a lot of parts of me. So there is only one self, but there's a lot of sort of sub-personalities to me. Think about how you are a different man in different situations. Think about how different emotions evoke a different part of you. You know, think about the part of you that acts up when you're ashamed. How old is that part? How old do you feel in those moments? So this is something Richard Schwartz did a lot of work with. He's a psychologist a phenomenologist, really. So he really studied as people would present themselves, the language they were using, and started to work with it in this very finely tuned way. So we can't go into detail on this, but think about you're encountering the seminarian not always as his self, but as some part. And one thing we talk about with our formators is what part of that guy is hooking what part of you? Does that question make sense? What part of that guy, if he's acting up and being stubborn, what is that hook in me? You know, stubborn people, for me, hook the part that thinks I'm supposed to make them just behave and they're being bad. That it hooks that, I don't let that part be in charge, but it hooks up a little childhood program for me. Does that make sense? Could you turn and talk for just a minute about one part you might recognize in yourself that gets hooked in formation? One part of you that can get hooked in formation, where you lose a sense of yourself for a minute, where you fall into something that's not as operative for you. So Schwartz would also say, here's the telling markers of being in ourself, in our actual self. Okay, we have curiosity, we're open-minded. That doesn't mean we are namby-pamby, but we're open-minded, we're wanting to understand things instead of rapidly judge them. We have compassion, being kind and understanding, especially to our own and others' feelings of hurt and sadness. There's a sense of calm, a sense of clarity, courage in the face of fears, confidence, even when we're not sure about things, we have confidence in our belief to get somewhere important. We have a sense of creativity. We can imagine more than one solution to something. Connectedness, feeling connected to ourselves and others. Would these describe a good Christian man? Right. These are all traits we want to emulate. There's times when you really are in all of these, and they're rare. Does that make sense? It's rare that we're in all of these. So let's do this as a turn and talk instead. When you lose touch with being in this part of self, how do you notice that? What parts do you tend to lose first? That question makes sense? What capacities, which of these 8 C's do you tend to let go of first in a formation session that's difficult for you? Turn and talk for a couple minutes, just wrestle with it. Good. Good. there was a lot of energy about that. First, you all looked at me like deers in the headlights, like, what is he talking about? So my insecure part was coming up at that point. And then you all started talking and my happy part showed up. So this is going. So I want to hear from a few people, and we'll, again, with the mic. What did you notice in your own kind of exploration of this? And maybe even if you notice, as you notice what parts go offline, what's it like for you physically? Because that's a tell for us. What goes on inside of your body when you lose track of those things? Okay. Right there.
So we reflected on what goes first.
Yeah.
And personally, I feel like curiosity is
Yeah.
maybe like, I'm just not interested.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I've
Yeah.
lost, like, okay, that's off the table.
We're done.
I don't care about that.
Yeah.
But then Father Mark asked a good question. I thought was another way of framing it. He said, what do you make your last stand on? Like, of these 8, like once the other 7 are gone, what's the,
which one are you trying to
who's the
preserve?
last man standing?
That's great.
And personally, creativity felt like the one that would be closest, because it's like, all right, I can at least brainstorm a way back into this situation.
That's a great. I was going to ask that follow-up question. That's great.
So yeah.
So yeah, where do you exit and what's your way back? Yeah, that's kind of what you just answered.
Yeah.
That'd be a great way to frame what people are saying. Thank you. Does creativity help you get back to the others?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Beautiful. Okay. A couple more, please. Over here.
I find the first thing that seems to go is my sense of calm. I
Uh-huh.
find myself getting a little anxious. I can feel that my body, my foot will start, doing the foot thing,
Yeah.
or adjusting the chair because I'm not sure where this conversation is going, and
Yeah.
losing a sense of then also connectedness with the person.
Yes. Yeah. You're kind of attending to this internal state of anxiety. Fears are going, and it's going to
Mhm.
disconnect us. That's a beautiful catch. Great catch to sort of saying, why is my foot going right now? Or why did my stomach just do that thing, or whatever it does? What's your way back? Do you have a sense of that? Like, what would be the one you think that would help you get back in the game if you kind of exited with the anxiety?
I would say the curiosities for me.
Curiosity would be a leading edge one. Yeah.
Of
Right.
trying to just understand where the person's coming from better, or
Yes.
trying to ask questions that can lead to deeper understanding, to help me figure out what's going on in the situation.
Yep.
So my curiosity is what keeps me
That's
alive.
beautiful. So stay curious. And for me, if I'm in that state, when I'm in that state, it's also, I have to start to regulate my body. Can I get out of fixed eye contact, take a couple of breaths? And then can I get back to the curiosity piece? Yeah. What else? One more at least, please. These are great. These are really important ways to pay attention to ourselves.
So we both came up with ways in which, like, the attention goes back into ourselves instead of for the other person.
Yes.
And like if it seems like a lack of connection, like the person yawns or you're not sure where to go with the next thing, then immediately your confidence is taken away. And then
Yeah.
and I was given the example of, like, if somebody hits on a topic that I happen to know a lot about, got a lot of experience on, and I want to jump to the end. I want to give them the answer. And like, I have to like hold that back, and I'm sure I'm lighting up like, just ready to tell.
Yeah.
But kind of getting that calmness coming over, and that sense of creativity, let them find their way.
Yes. But those are beautiful. So one of the things you were noticing, though, is that, take me back to the first one, that you start to pay attention internally. And then there was another piece that caught my ear, and I missed it. What happens next? Oh, you start to feel insecure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. How many of you ever felt insecure in your formation sessions? Okay. So yeah, so we start to feel insecure. How old do you feel when you feel insecure? This is another way to think about these. How old do you feel? Yeah, little. We can often, this would be if we were working within the system, which we won't do this weekend, but we would close eyes and say, can you picture that insecure part? Can you make a caring connection to your insecurity? Does that make sense? Which could be a really interesting thing to do even in your own consultation. Boy, my insecurity keeps coming up. I need to figure out how to care about that. Because my insecurity is probably trying to protect me from shame. It's doing some job for me. So can I befriend my insecurity instead of just wishing it would go away? Does that make sense? So this is the way we can welcome these in ourselves. As we learn to welcome more of this complexity in ourselves, we create more space for it in the guy. We could say to a guy we're working with, something just happened with what I said. Can you tell me what just happened? It looked like something shut down. Did I see that right? Where we start to make room in the moment for what's actually happening between us. What a beautiful gift for a man who needs to be pastoral to people later, to have somebody practice attunement with him. And attunement means we sort of, in the moment to moment, we're noticing how we're doing with each other and how we're triggering, and we're helping co-regulate. We're doing this out loud a little bit. He's anxious. You know, it looks like you just got anxious over there. What happened? Can we both take a step out of that for a minute and look at it together? We calm down our tone of voice. So these won't be things that come up in motivational interviewing, but I think they're hugely important just in terms of the interpersonal learning that goes on. And so much of formation is on the level of nonverbal or non-conceptual. It's just on relational. It's, you know, my daughter and her daughter doing that. They're getting in sync, and there's a sense of we're co-regulating with each other. And the human organism thrives on that, on being seen, reflected, welcomed, and then things start to open up. I had one fellow tell me in this I've had two people tell me this the last year, so I got to watch for it. He said, you interrupt me too much. Because he would be kind of going off on what I consider tangents, and he'd be getting revved up. So I was trying to help him calm down. He said, when you do that, it throws me back further. And I need you not to do that. So I said to him, you know, I will really work on that in our meetings. And I could have told him, well, the reason I do that is you're getting pretty worked up and I'm trying to help you. You need me to not interrupt you. So let's see what happens if I can follow what he's needing. So I said, I'll work on that. So the next time he came in, we had a session afterwards. I thought, I did it again. So I sent him an email that night and I said, I did it again. This is hard for me to manage, but I'm going to work on it. Next time, I promise. And at the next session, I declared it at the front. I'm going to just let you talk. If you want me to tag in, you tell me. And if I have something I think I need to say, I'll raise a hand and you can call on me or not. That session went well. The next session went deeper than anything I've done with him in 2 years. He hadn't given me that information and I hadn't taken it seriously before. But he needed something to help him regulate himself with me and needed to know I could be there at the pace he was being. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's happened to me twice in the last year with people who I thought were really difficult and very defensive. But the defensiveness was happening between us. Does that make sense? I'm defending against staying where he needs to stay uncomfortably because it's making me uncomfortable. I think we can go faster. Now, sometimes I'll interrupt and it works very well. So I'm not against interrupting people. I'm just against interrupting people when it sort of tanks their process. So we got to pay attention. Is this key? Are we in sync? How's this going? You know, I just interrupted you. Did I lose where you were? Okay. So yes, please. Yeah, let's do the mic, and then we'll be wrapping up in just a couple of minutes too.
You know, in attachment theory, they talk about corrective emotional experience, but you're
Yes.
really saying that this
Yes.
is in the interaction, in the formation session or
Right.
in therapy, it's like, this is a real encounter.
Yep.
And I don't just look at, he's the resistant one and
Yes.
I'm not.
Right.
It's like, there is resistance between us and can we talk about
Yep.
it? And can I let him give me information about how he feels about what I just did?
Yeah.
And that's a corrective emotional
corrective
experience.
that's
And so that
beautiful.
helps them.
Yes. Yeah, and it helps. What do you think it does if you put it in your framework? What does it do when you have a corrective emotional experience? What happens in the person?
I think it affirms them. It
Yeah.
affirms that they have a right to see things the
Yeah.
way they see things. They have a right to their feelings, even in the therapeutic relationship.
Yes.
And so I think it enables them to be more free to be themselves.
Yeah. They have a right to exist.
Yes.
Fully as they are.
Yes. And I'm
Yeah.
actually letting them do it with me.
Yes. Yes.
Which
Right.
is stronger than just saying, I'm encouraging you to do it with somebody in your life,
Right.
because you can do it with
You
me.
can do it in here. We can do this together.
Yes.
Yeah. We're creating a condition for
I
that.
give you permission
Yes.
to tell me
Yeah.
what you need
Okay.
from me.
Beautiful. So all of this is, and we'll wrap up with this. This is, I think, the foundation of human formation. I think it's foundational. It's not benchmarks, but I'm not invalidating benchmarks. We could do this beautifully. A guy could grow and he wouldn't achieve the benchmarks that he needs to achieve. And he may not be fit to be a priest. And that's okay. The guys don't have to turn into priests. They need to emerge as Pope Paul was saying, they need to emerge as the man who they are. And it may or may not be suited to priesthood. So I'm not trying to get a guy to fit something. I'm trying to see who this is and what kind of priest would he be. Does that seem fair to people? Yeah, what's emerging for this man? And if we don't welcome that and greet it and we don't see what it is, it'll go underground, he'll conform, we'll check the boxes, and he'll be good enough to be ordained. But he won't be, as Sue was saying earlier, really alive. So one thing I want to encourage as we go through the next days, really be deeply reflected on, and do this especially in the practicums, what's going on in me, and be caringly reflective with each other in the practicums. You know, I noticed when he was saying that to you, it looked like you sort of shut down. Just notice it. We're not trying to get it right. We're trying to be interested in what's happening. And that can be awkward when you're practicing a new skill. But can you just notice what it's like to practice a new skill? That may be better than just acquiring the skill right away. What happens in me in this uncertain space? And how do people stay with me in that? So do a lot. We want to keep turning this back inside ourselves as well, in the service of the man in the end. But if we can't be a good instrument to ourselves, we won't be able to pay good attention outside of ourselves. That seem fair enough? Yeah. Okay. Great. Any closing words, Father John, for as we close up for the evening? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Okay.
just a reminder again, there's 9 a.m. in the Rathskeller. We'll have drinks and snacks there. Sorry.
Right.
Okay.
And maybe
9 p.m. and then 8
Maybe
a.m.
9
staff
p.m. too.
meeting, 8 a.m. staff meeting, just a reminder for that. Thank you. Presenters and practicum mentors. No drinks at 9 a.m.
Oh, can I say one last thing? I'm sorry. Besides the Rathskeller, tonight, if you could read the first chapter, I always forget to say these things. It's about a 10-page piece on motivational interviewing. And there's an appraisal interview, something that you sort of start to write your own targets for growth on page, I have it here. 11, okay, page 11. And then if you could look at the TED Talk by Carol Dweck, that may be more than you're going to get done tonight. Do at least, see if you could do the TED Talk at least, and the little inventory, and then the reading could wait for you too. Yeah, TED Talk's 15 minutes, and it's quite useful. Yeah, she's an unusual bird, but it's really good research that she did. It's really good research. Okay, thank y'all.